being a songwriter is probably something that I've challenged myself to do over the years because it gave me the task of trying to distill my ideas into this limited format of a verse, chorus, bridge type of traditional songwriting structure. And you don't get to be long-winded. You have to try and convey something within some very tight boundaries. And conversationally, I've always had trouble doing that.
Where the rivers are as wide as his eyes. Side by side, the chapel with the forbidden apple and the weeping willow holy signs. Paint the yellows and the reds of autumn.
But in songwriting, I'm given that challenge. It's almost as if I saw something in myself that needed work, and so having to be a songwriter helped me with that.
We're waiting for you, and just when you find what you've been dreaming of, there will be dust in the circuits, dust in the circuits, dust in the circuits of love. Long nights in work mode, mornings in shambles.
Welcome to the Intentional Clinician podcast. I'm your host, Paul Krauss, licensed professional counselor. In today's episode, I'm going to be speaking with Bart Davenport. We're going to be jumping into all types of topics surrounding music. Yes, this is another of the special series I've been doing on music, but we go into so much more. The artistic process, beauty in the world, existentialism, melancholy, expressing oneself, playing live, learning, and dealing with the opposites, the dialectics, and getting into an artistic space. And Bart has some great advice for people who are wanting to possibly dabble in music, whether or not as an amateur, a hobbyist, or as a professional. Bart Davenport might be a multitude of things depending on whom you ask. He's been a mod, a blues singer, and a soft rock troubadour. He's an eclectic singer-songwriter with the timeless voice of a real crooner. He lives and creates in Los Angeles, California, formerly from Oakland and San Francisco. Smooth and yet curiously pointed, his work transports us to an imagined past or present filled with romantic odes and enigmatic characters. Davenport's stories are often a reflection of now, taking place in a fantasy world but conveying personal and universal truths. We're going to talk a lot about Bart's history coming up in Oakland, California, and being involved in the 1990s garage and blues scenes, as well as his current work, and a lot of things that I think will help you reflect on life, because music is the universal language. Returning to acoustic guitars and 60s Baroque pop tones, Davenport recently tracked 12 new songs in his home studio. The result is an album called Episodes, which is his 8th proper solo album, and has already been released on Tapate Records out of Europe. It was released in March 2022, and as you'll find out, Bart has so many projects that you can listen to. You're going to love this interview, and we're going to interlace it with a lot of Bart Davenport's music. All right, let's get to the interview. Welcome to the podcast, Bart Davenport. Thank you so much for being here today.
Hey, Paul.
All right. Well, I'm pumped to interview you. As I just saw you on the stage here back in March, you were playing double duty, triple duty. You played one of your songs. You played with Robin Hitchcock, and you played with Kelly Stoltz at Zebulon in LA, Los Angeles. That was a really great show.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to do it.
Yeah, I was very impressed with the showmanship and the musicianship, and the fact that you knew all these other songs that weren't even your songs that you were playing, except for the one that you played for yourself. It was very, very good stuff.
I think it's been very important to my own songwriting to play other people's music as well. That's a really important. That's a really important piece of the puzzle because I have learned so much by performing other people's songs, and then I'm able to incorporate some fresh ideas to my own songwriting. Hopefully, yeah. And not only that, it's so much fun to work as an accompanist and then switch gears and be the front person.
It's hard to tell who is real in here. Come on, let's go. You've nothing to turn to now, everything's changed. Come on, let's go. Stop looking for answers in everyone's gaze. Come on, let's go. What's the point in wasting time on people that you'll never know? Come on, let's go.
I think that's quite a interesting response. I can agree with that. I'm not a musician by trade, but I did play in a band for years in college where I was a backup keyboardist and singer, and that actually helped me learn a lot about what kind of songs I wanted to write and what I liked. And then I wrote my own songs for fun on the side too. So I think it's really versatile. This is one of our episodes of this podcast while we talk about philosophy and psychology a lot. We have a lot of music lovers out there, so this is one of several podcasts on music. And after that show, a bunch of my friends were saying, man, we knew about, Robin and everything, but we had not known much about Bart Davenport. And then everybody started taking a deep dive into your catalog. And so I took a deep dive into your catalog, and I was profoundly impressed and excited to learn about it because all of the albums have like a different feel to them. And so I was just kind of amazed at that and how you had pulled that off. It almost like it was the same voice, your voice, but then these different, completely different moods and styles. And so that is kind of maybe where I'll start because one of your albums is turning 20 years old this year.
Yes.
Game Preserve, and it's actually being reissued on vinyl by Love Monk Records. Can you explain a little bit about that, and maybe some comments about the different moods you've got going on in these albums?
Yeah, well, Game Preserve is my second album, my second solo album. And as a solo artist, I was kind of a late bloomer because I spent the 1990s from beginning to end as the lead singer of some bands. The Loved Ones from 90 to 95, and then the Kinetics from 95 to 99. And so during those years, we did put records out and, of course, do a ton of touring and live shows and everything. So it wasn't until I was in my early 30s and the new century began that I started to make solo albums and drifted into the role of the singer-songwriter, which prior to that, I was always just sort of the front person of a band. And so with Game Preserve being the second album, I came into it with a lot and I had a lot of songs. I had forged this incredible partnership with the producer and bass player on most of the songs, John Erickson. And we really wanted to make something special. So we booked the studio time. We had the luxury during those years to have this incredible community and scene around us, to have all these various different friends of ours play on the album, sing on the album. And it was a really special time and place that we captured. And we did it entirely analog, using analog tape through analog boards. Even the mixdown was a 16-channel analog board from 2-inch tape to 1/4-inch tape. And it wasn't until the mastering process that we took the audio and put it into the digital realm. Then the album came out on compact disc on a brand new label that my friend Paul Kaler.
Nice.
Paul Kaler started this label called Antenna Farm, and we were his first release. In fact, right alongside my friend Hélène Renaud's band, they also put out a release. They released the 2 albums at the same time, and they launched the label with these records. But at the time, LPs were, of course, really slowing down, and people were still buying CDs, although downloading and streaming was definitely coming up. But we just only ever put it out on CD. That record ended up being licensed to a German label in Hamburg called BB Island, and very significantly a Spanish label in Madrid called Mushroom Pillow. The record actually ended up doing pretty well in Spain through Mushroom Pillow. In the US, it didn't break out beyond California too much, and some of that probably had to do with the fact that Antenna Farm was a brand new label. But of course, in the Bay Area, there was a lot of great response. I know they would play it on Cal-X and things like that. But in general, there was a sense that it was this effort that we'd done so much to make this, what we thought was just this beautiful album, and it didn't exactly become something that millions of people heard or anything like that.
Euphoria is all you know. Wild seas will hide the soul. All of the good and the bad times you ride like a seesaw. Wild love's prisoners all played charades. You wore a belt up the accolades. But if you get caught with your pants down, you really shouldn't care. 'Cause everyone on earth is so beautiful, even you. Oh no, he did not say that. Yes, it's true. You see, I need a dose of reality. Make no claims of neutrality, but I'd rather make friends than enemies. And I want all my allies to come and dance with me, all through the valleys and the mountains too. Swim through rivers and oceans blue. Even the crust is out on the avenue. Spell a little change for me one time, 'cause everyone.
And over the years, it always struck me that here we'd made this really analog thing, and it was only ever available in a digital format. So Shindig magazine out of the UK, their editor did a write-up on this album, I think back in 2017, or no, actually later than that. It must have been 2019. Yeah, 2019, I think. And their editor, John Mills, was speaking of the Game Preserve album in terms of it being kind of this overlooked gem, this kind of lost nugget, and that it did some things stylistically that were unique and unusual for the time, but then another generation 15 years later or so had picked up on doing some aesthetically similar things. And so it was sort of, even though it's a very retro sounding record that really harkens back to the 70s, he was pitching the idea that it was sort of ahead of its time in being in utilizing that kind of 1970s sound in the early 2000s. So it dawned on me then and there that I should probably try to have an analog version of this available. And also, I love vinyl records. I collect them. I listen to them all the time. And that's my favorite format. So I asked Love Monk, who have been putting out my more recent solo albums, if they'd be interested in a vinyl reissue. And God bless them, they were interested, and we were able to go back to the 1/4-inch tapes and remaster specifically for vinyl. And I think it sounds fantastic. It was really fun to get back in there and do that whole process. Get the you have to bake the tape. The tape has to be baked so that because it may have congealed over the years.
Oh my goodness!
And it has to be loosened up again so it can play. And there's a whole process when you transfer and do that. So it was a lot of fun getting this on and going back to all this. And now this is going to probably happen before your podcast airs, but me and several of the people that are alumni from the album's original sessions are going to put on 2 shows playing songs from it. We're going to play Permanent Records in LA, and we're going to play the Stork Club in Oakland. I'm sorry if that was really long-winded.
I like long-winded. This is a long-form podcast.
Right.
So sometimes when somebody tells a long story, I'll actually kind of break it up with a cool song in the middle or something.
Okay,
but I
great.
think this is great. So I think this is exactly what listeners want to know. We want to know about, the details of it. And I think the fun part about this is a lot of the listeners I know are in I can look at the map of where people download. There's a ton of downloads in California, Arizona, of course, where I am. A lot of downloads in the UK. So I think the fun part is everyone has like streaming on their phone, even if they aren't a music fan. Most people have access to that now. They can just jump online and listen to your stuff. And if they like it, they can check out this album. I love listening to vinyl albums. And one of the reasons I love vinyl albums is not just the sound, but it's the fact that when I put on a vinyl album, I have to sit there and watch it so it doesn't like mess up the album at the end, and my record player doesn't break. And so it forces me to lay down or sit or stand near my record player or read a book or something for an hour, or 45 minutes. And I feel like that. And in some ways, my theory about the vinyl revolution is that we now have a ritual that takes us away from TV and phones and texting and tasks, and we can just like bathe in the music. Because when I listen to an album, and unfortunately, I've listened to all of your stuff on streaming, and I bought some of it on Bandcamp, but it's still an MP3. I was, running around and doing errands and whatnot, and but I still loved it. And sometimes it's a blessing and a curse, right? I'm walking around listening to your newest album, and I was like, wow, I feel like this is really in the zeitgeist of the times. And I was like walking through Phoenix, where I live part of the year, and looking at the houses and thinking about the environment, and just it was like beautiful. And then other times, you're just driving around or showing a friend or whatever, and it's on a phone, doesn't even have good speakers, So I love that you're putting that on a vinyl. And I'm going to encourage all the listeners. I'm going to throw some samples all throughout this podcast in of your songs, little samples, but I'm going to encourage the listeners to listen to that one front to finish, because beginning to finish, because I don't know about the listeners, but a lot of people, who aren't music listeners often just listen for that single on the radio. And I would encourage people with Bart Davenport's music to listen to the whole thing front to back, because it's got this depth to it. And I feel like it brings you somewhere. And in today's world, if you can get brought anywhere that isn't some consumerist hell, I think it's a good place to go. So I'm going to say,
when you're sad, it all seems moot. Pretty girls ain't even cute when you're sad. When you're up, it all falls down. Your smile turns into a frown. Soon you're down again. But I know the Happy Day Brigade, and they charge into my life like a gay parade. And I know the risk you take by making changes in your life that ain't so safe. When you're in, you get kicked out. No holding on to the cloud when you're out. Those who are hip, so full of conceit, are soon to be obsolete and uncool again. But I know the day will come when we see more than what you wore last night at a show.
Listeners, I'm already endorsing this to listen to Game Preserve. It's got that 70s sound. It sounds like it could have been made in the 70s. And that was interesting to me, because I recently saw some concert footage of you performing one of the songs off of there. And I was like, oh my gosh, I literally can't tell if this is San Francisco in 2003 or Santa Monica in 77. It's hard to explain what's going on there.
Yeah.
So, I'm glad you're sharing that. I guess since I want to keep asking some questions, I'm going to go with a current question and sort of maybe a last 20-year question, which is, this is something I've heard about before with other musicians that are in your kind of circle, is that somehow they're getting a lot of play in Spain and all over Europe, but not so much in the US. Can you talk to me a little bit about your experience kind of touring or selling records in Europe?
Yeah, it's just sort of right place, right time. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the case for most music careers. And of course, I suppose the majority of the time for most of us, it's wrong place, wrong time. But with Spain in particular, there was a right place, right time moment. And that was that I was, by a pretty random set of circumstances, my sort of first band, The Loved Ones, got to tour Spain in 1995, and to really pretty large, enthusiastic audiences. And this is something we had no idea would happen. We went there not knowing if anyone would come see us, but it just, and this was before everyone on earth was on the internet. So we really had no way of tracking that or knowing what to expect. Like nowadays, there's a lot of ways to predict, looking online at certain things, what might happen for any given show that you put on all over the world. There's always that element of chance still, but there are ways now that you can see that. But back in 1995, we just had no idea if anyone was going to come see us. And incredibly, all the shows were packed and really enthusiastic. And I made connections during that tour that would last a lifetime, and that are still part of my life now. And that audience, quite a few, not maybe not all of them, but quite a few of those fans followed me into everything I did afterwards. And conveniently, some of them started labels. And so when my solo career happened, just in the very next decade, I was able to release new music there on Spanish labels. And it's a big difference, because when you're on a label that's based in that country, it's a bit more like you're a local artist. So you have an in to maybe touring and playing some of the smaller towns and getting in just a little deeper than someone who's on an indie label based out of New York that just has a distribution deal in Spain. Those kinds of acts would often only just play Barcelona and Madrid and then move on to France. But for me, getting deep in there with all this connection with the actual Spanish music scene, I can go there and play 12, 13 cities in a row, 13 different cities, because of that connection with the local scene. And it's just been such a blessing. And of course, it just happened kind of by accident. That's this kind of thing where you happen to be in a place, the right year, the right week, the right day, connections are made, and things work out in a way that can continue to be a really positive thing. I would say that I would love it if that had happened also in maybe Tokyo or London as well. And maybe there's still time. But the Europe thing has been interesting. Germany too has been a place where I've gotten to work, and my most recent solo album is on a German label based out of Hamburg. And those guys are really cool. They have great taste and a really amazing roster. I think that there's room for artists who aren't super duper established in the States to maybe establish themselves in some small way in Europe. Because at the end of the day, right, it's all about who you work with. So if you work with Europeans, you do stuff in Europe, but you have to be lucky enough to make connections with people there. And again, like I said, right place, right time.
Well, that's a good way of putting it. It's just interesting to me. It's just some other artists people might be familiar with, but Josh Rouse had so much success in Europe that he moved there.
Yeah.
And I had met him when I was young and in bands around 2003 or 4, and he moved there not long after that. And then Kelly Stoltz, who you're friends with and tour with a lot, also told me that he had all this sort of success in Europe where people were buying his albums and, wanting him to tour. And I was just like, what in the world? Like, it's like this whole, like, underground thing. I mean, maybe it's the same way that Americans love, European music when we hear like cool little bands out of London or Spain. I don't know. It's interesting how things evolve in ways that you would have not imagined had you not made the connection, which is what I love that you said there, because I think in psychology, a lot of times people, clients who are having rough times, they haven't made those connections with their art or with their whatever they were trying to put out in the world. And it's important to note that before the internet came out, you made a lot of connections there on a tour that you couldn't have imagined would have been like it was. And those relationships were key. And I think that's a key point that one of the key points from the psychology angle I hear is that relationships have been important to you in your career. And I see that because I look at, just for fun on the internet, I've looked at some of your posts, and you'll have like so many people saying, "Oh my gosh, Bart, I remember seeing you 10 years ago, and I can't wait to see you next month," or whatever. Or you have like all these people, I don't know who they are. There must be people or maybe fans, like kind of commenting on all these sort of things. Like, and I think that's part of music. When you have an artist that puts their heart into something and has the talent, which you do, I think people make a connection with them, like I don't know what to call it, energetic connection. They just feel like, I like this artist, or I like this band, I like this person, and they really feel connected. And I think that helps hopefully sustain artists throughout their career. I'm just waxing poetic right now. I have no idea what my point fully is, but I'm just sort of reflecting on what you were saying.
Tell you twice, this is paradise, but I don't wanna leave the shore. I'm a people person first, and I know people are the worst. A people person, so some things I don't wanna know. Whatever you do more. Do more than you did before. Wherever you are, beware. Beware you are. You were on your way to work today, but there's nothing they can pay you for. They will tell you twice this is
With that question, I want to talk about more of your records, but first I do want to ask you the old question that everybody asks, which is kind of how did you get started playing music, as a child, or when did you start playing music, and how did you know you wanted to do that,
Well, that started for me like when I was about 6.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah, I just got totally obsessed with the Beatles when I was 6 years old. Really earlier, I have these cassette tapes from when I was 4, or maybe even 3.5. I don't know. I've got these cassette tapes that my grandparents made of me singing Beatles songs when I was a toddler. I was totally obsessed with the Beatles. And my dad bought me a guitar when I was 6. It was so big, and I was so intimidated by it that I didn't actually try to play it until I was 8. But then I started in earnest learning to play the guitar at 8. And by the time I was 9, my dad had set me up with 2 cassette tape recorders that you could feed one into the other, and we rigged it so that you could do overdubs.
Oh, wow.
So by 9 years old, I was doing these Beatles songs and multi-tracking myself, where I would play the rhythm guitar and do the lead vocal and then add on a harmony. So I would sing the John part and then go back on and overdub the Paul part, and then maybe add some hand claps. And it's real crazy. 9 years old, I was doing that. So I knew what I wanted to do with my life as a child. That was that. And it was one of the few things that the adults around me encouraged and applauded. So I thought at a very early age, oh, this must be who I am.
Wow. And so, that is so cool in so many ways that you started so young, and people actually were encouraging a music career. It's funny because where I grew up, and a lot of people, when you get a kid in middle school or high school that says, I want to be a musician, parents would scoff and say, oh, you can't make any money being a musician. It's a hard life,
Exactly.
blah, blah, blah.
Which they should have told me, actually. They should have said that.
Yeah, true. But, that's the thing, is like, if you follow your bliss and your love, is it about, not everybody has the career of like Fleetwood Mac or the Beatles, right? But is it fulfilling? That's the hard question. Is it a fulfilling life, to do that? And can you get by with it? That's the hard part.
It's a golden time, or so I'm told. It's an odd century for the sensitive. It's so hard to live, and the callous all succeed. Take a look around at this world I found, like a lost worker bee. It's a grown-up time for me. In this day and age, I don't fit in, having never made money. I keep throwing salt, think it's all my fault, and it wasn't meant to be. Keep drinking soap, wash it down with hope. It's an art recipe. It's a grown-up time for me. So drink some water with your wine. Lost and lonely friends of mine. It's a grown-up time.
Well, I think that these were my parents, being of that hippie boomer generation, very much saw themselves as kind of anti-establishment. And in those days when I was a kid, there was still a really prevalent attitude amongst their generation, at least pockets of it, that one should do whatever they please with their life. This may have been kind of a naive idea, and of course they had no idea the kind of economic struggles that the next generation and generations to come were going to experience. But at the same time, I have to thank them for encouraging me to live an artistic life, because I'm so grateful for that. It's obviously one of the main things that I live to do. It's not everything in life, but it's a lot. It's a lot. And that gets very complicated, because you get your identity in this world too wrapped up in what you do. And then that can be hard, because there becomes so much pressure on you to always be excelling at that. And there's nothing wrong with just living and not having to constantly produce something. Actually, There's nothing wrong with doing nothing. But at the same time, it gave me something to do, and it's brought me a lot of joy. It can be really stressful because, yeah, there's no money in it.
Yes. So that is interesting. Do you ever, I guess this is maybe too personal, you don't have to answer this, but do you ever have to do other jobs because of the economics of it?
Absolutely. I have a day job now.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Absolutely. I usually have a day job.
Okay.
And I do sessions. I back up other artists. I am part of a cover band that does weddings and private events.
Mm-hmm.
I do lots and lots of music work that doesn't have to do with composing or singing my own stuff. I do a lot of other people's music, like I was saying earlier. When you're talking about backing up Robin and Kelly and stuff, I love doing that sort of thing, and sometimes it pays. I've certainly gone through brief periods of my life where I was earning a living strictly from music, and I've been grateful for those. You know, I once had a song licensed to a television ad that played during the Super Bowl, so that sort of thing. I had another song that in a band I was in called Honeycut. We licensed a track to Apple that they used for their the install for their operating system at one point. So these kinds of licenses with your recordings and things, they come up and they pay well sometimes, and then you can live off that for a while, but the money does run out.
Yeah. Because it's hard, because you're right, like a 9 to 5 or whatever you're doing part-time or full-time, you know, it's consistent because your labor is consistent, where the music, it's like, you know, an artist that sells a painting can live off that for a while. And like, you got a song licensed and you can live off that for a while. I had friends in a psychedelic band when I was younger. They were like mentors to me. They're a band called Calliope. If you ever look them up, they're kind of fun. And
perfect. That's a perfect name for a psych band.
They're from Michigan, and that's where I was from. And they had a song licensed in the 1996 Olympics. It became one of the theme songs, and they got $50,000 or more, I believe. And that's how they built their studio, and that's how they actually recorded all of their albums after that.
Right.
And they lived on. I mean, they still all had to get jobs gradually. They gradually all got jobs. That was in the 90s, and but they were fun mentors to me. But they all ended up kind of dispersing and doing other things. But for a while, they lived off that. You know, in the 90s, 50,000 is like 100,000 probably. Yeah,
and nowadays, those kinds of licenses don't pay as well as they used to back then. So even though you have all this inflation and the cost of living has just skyrocketed since then, and rents are like 10 times what they used to be in the 90s, those kinds of licenses now pay way less than they did then. Like literally, the numbers are now lower.
Wow.
So it's not it's not a good situation these days. But that was the beauty of those times, that you could sync one song and you could do so much with it. And that congrats to I mean, that's brilliant that they were able to do that. And Michigan.
It's a tough market.
Yeah. But Michigan has a long history of incredible music.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's there's a lot.
I won't. Frickin' Detroit.
Yeah. Motown. Yeah.
Yeah.
Motown being the most popular. Then, of course, we've got one of the guys from the Eagles and Madonna and all that. I won't name some of the other artists.
MC5 and Stooges.
MC5. Oh yeah. Iggy Pop. Yeah, he's from there. So yeah, it's interesting how things change, especially with streaming, because I've actually been watching. I don't know, but I'm hoping your streaming numbers are going up every year as people discover you. I don't know if that's the case, but hopefully after this podcast, that'll help. Although streaming doesn't really pay much of anything, it isn't bad if you can get a check every month from streaming.
When I sleep the day through, When the color sacks wrap themselves around your heart, and you can't escape no matter how you fall apart. Give it up, give it up, give it up, give it up. Give it up, give it up, give it up, give it up.
Yeah, so I'm not really even with streaming and stuff. I'm just like, I've grown so accustomed to earning so little at this music game that, like, honestly, I just look at streaming as this incredible. I still am in awe of this incredible thing that anyone all over the world could just like instantly go on there and listen. So it's I love that it's there and people can do that. I love it. I love that. The money, yeah, it would just be so nice to earn more from it, but it doesn't seem like that's the way it is. I mean, that's just not how it is, right? Who am I to? I can't fix that. But what I can do is be in awe of the fact that people are listening. And I love that. You make something and then you put it on there, and then like people at their own leisure can just go in there and have a listen. Maybe if they listen on headphones, yeah. And they're going to get a great experience, hopefully. I mean, I'm trying to make this whole little sonic world for them to dive into, and some of them actually are. And to me, that's so exciting. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it's fun. I think that's the best part of it. That's one of the best things about technology that's come out. When I was a kid, I used to dream about. I remember thinking I'd go to the video store and I was like, "What if you could just go on a computer?" But then I thought, but back then I was on it was modems. So I was like, but it would take so long to download. That was my thought, and now it's like, that's what I used to think. And I thought, what if there was music and you could just like find it, and then of course it all happened. Of course I was like 12 having these thoughts in a mall, Anyway.
See, you should have copywritten that thing right then and there.
It's funny. I think I have a theory that people in the world come up with the same idea around the same time.
Oh yeah.
Just because of human evolution. I won't get. I'm going to not go on a tangent, okay? Because I have to cut that out. But I've heard of some different things where people thought of things at the same time. It was being copyrighted in Silicon Valley.
But Frank Zappa.
Yeah,
Frank Zappa, I believe, in the 80s, went round and had meetings with all the major labels, suggesting that they set up subscription services. Like, there used to be the record clubs.
Yeah.
Where you would send them a check in the mail, and then they would mail LPs to you back. They would mail back, like Columbia Records very famously had it. Yeah. And they'd send you 5 albums, and, you saved money. And you just had to trust Columbia Records to put out cool records that you would enjoy listening to or whatever. But it was a subscription service. So he went around to all the major labels and pitched the idea of a subscription service that would be downloading digital files of the albums. He did this way back in the 80s when the only way to download would have been these gigantic files, and you would have had to have done it through the phone, the Ethernet phone connection, and very few people even had any kind of internet service yet at home. But this was, I think, the late 80s he came up with this. And I might be wrong on the timeline, but he did pass away in the early 90s, I think. So
somewhere in the 90s.
It must have been. I may have my timeline a little off, but from what I think I remember, the story goes is that it was like the late 80s when he went around, and they were like, "This is this is going to be too involved. No one's going to want to do this. I mean, and what we have to understand is that the average household still didn't have a computer. And so, but he was thinking forward, and it's interesting because he saw the future, because of course, eventually you had, with iTunes, you had people downloading music onto their computers and his whole thing was, let's do away with physical product, which I'm actually against that to a certain degree, because I really enjoy collecting records. But he was seeing this kind of minimalist future where you wouldn't have to bother with that. You could just bring the information digitally into your home through the phones. And they all rejected this idea. That they were not on board with him at all. And it's amazing that his idea did eventually come to exist and go beyond that you don't even have to download anything. You just stream the audio. But now what is it? It's a subscription, right? You pay Apple once a month, or you pay Spotify or et cetera to bring the music through the internet into your home. He totally thought of that way back in the 80s.
I love that. I mean, yeah, he was such an innovator. He's incredible, incredible thinker, very original. For people that don't know Frank Zappa, I think the best way to start with Frank Zappa, if you're interested in it, is actually just watch him interviewed. Just look up interviews of him talking, and you will become, enthralled, and then go to his music, because he also just made his music the way he wanted to, and it's all amazing but also crazy. Like it's so different than anything at the time that it's just sounds, I don't even know. When I first heard Frank Zappa, I was like, what is this? Like, I don't understand what's happening, but it was amazing. I was so moved by it. But yeah, there's
an incredible video of Frank in the early 60s on the Steve Allen show, playing the bicycle.
I heard of that. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's before he had the long hair and the freaky look and everything. He was still he's wearing like a suit and tie, has a short haircut. My dad actually went to college at the same time as him, at the same college.
Oh, really?
Actually, junior college in Pomona, California.
So they probably ran across each other.
Yeah, Frank had a reputation already that he was this weird guy who was into avant-garde music and recording, and that he was really proactive and prolific, and he already had a reputation for sure. So my dad had heard about this guy Frank, maybe walked past him in the halls or whatever. They didn't become friends or anything.
That's so funny. Like the world's like kind of small sometimes.
Yeah.
While I long for the weightlessness of space, loneliness is like a noose. Keep it light and keep it loose. I give in to the gravity of this time. Isn't it you that you're thinking of? Isn't it you, really you, really you? Isn't it you that you're thinking of? We rely on the physical world for love. Oh, take it away. I'll return to the spiritual womb at times. You would too if you had it as good as mine.
So yeah, I've got some questions coming up about live performances, but I kind of want to just talk about a couple of your records, and let's go forward to backward. The new solo album is called Episodes, which came out in 2022. And I have to say, I think it's quite a masterpiece. I mean, there are singles on there. Obviously, Easy Listeners is like quite a single, and It's You in my mind are singles, but the rest of it is also just very, very good to listen to. I think it captures, and something I wrote down was, it sort of captures this, like, I think all your music does, but especially this album is like beautiful arrangements but like existential melancholy, but then like joy somehow, like a happy existentialist. That's kind of what I was picturing. I don't know if you meant to do that, but I'm definitely, during this episode, I'm going to play, just for people, I decided I'm going to play the whole song of Easy Listeners, just so people can hear it.
Yeah, great.
Maybe right around now. But I was curious if you could reflect a little bit, maybe on the arrangement, but also the lyrics a little bit.
Yeah.
Keep calm and keep up the pace. Keep calm but don't be late. As sure as the sun will rise, the machine keeps churning. Keep calm, lonely citizens. Be strong, don't be mean. As sure as the day is long, your time is coming to be adrift again in summer, to be a resident of the breeze, to long for something other than just our own survival by degrees. Keep calm, easy listeners. Keep tuning into your dreams. True love is infinite as a still winter's eve. We fall like dominoes. We rise like steam, like half-forgotten songs. We still hold some meaning. To be adrift again in summer, to be a resident of the breeze, to long for something other than just our own survival by degrees, by degrees. Now there's no more time to wander, no more time to do as you please, no more time to even ponder our own survival by degrees. Help us, please. Help us, please.
Trying to remember what it was like to write that. I think it was the usual scenario in which I have music, a set of chord changes and a melody that I'm already coming up with just through trying things on the guitar and toying around. And I definitely wanted to do something with this kind of quasi samba kind of strum and rhythm, sort of vaguely Brazilian influenced rhythmic feel and tone. And then I have to go through the process of writing a song to that music, because unless I want to write an instrumental song, I'm going to have to tell a story with vocals and lyrics. But so often I come up with a bit of music first, and then I have to go through the hard part of figuring out what this song is about. What does the song want to be? What does it want to say? What's the music telling me? And the music will often push me in a direction where I start to try to dig out what the story is in that music, and then write a little story for that. And in the case of Easy Listeners, I think it began in that kind of melancholy mood where you're thinking back to simpler times, thinking back to a time when I was less busy, when you could just kind of drift around for a while and take things in and have time to kind of ponder a bit. And how I'd love to get back there. And it was coming from a moment pre-pandemic where I just felt like there's only 24 hours in a day, and I just can't keep up with everything I seem to have to do constantly to hustle to survive and to get by and to keep up with the world around me. And being very nostalgic for those days years earlier where, for whatever reason, things used to move a bit slower, and there was kind of time to think about who you are and what you want to do, or something like that. It was kind of a sense of longing to get back there. I didn't finish writing the song until I was deep in the lockdown phase. And the irony of that is there was a lot of free time. And so the lyrics took a bit of a turn in that when I was talking about to long for something other than just our own survival by degrees, degrees of survival, like how well are you surviving? It became something a bit more serious in a way, because we're now talking maybe a bit about surviving a pandemic, surviving illness, or something like, or surviving, or for who knows, so surviving the isolation of lockdown, or surviving the test of that life threw you at that moment. So it took on a different turn, whereas before I was waxing nostalgic about being less busy. And then when I finished writing it, I was kind of waxing nostalgic just for a less troublesome time, a less troubled era or something. So it took on more meaning as it went. And I always want to. I tend to want to write things that will hopefully last, in that they could take on other meaning later on. Like you could apply this story to many other scenarios or something. It doesn't always have to be about a really specific thing, right?
Right.
It shouldn't
no, I
really,
mean,
because you want to use it for other stuff.
I
Right?
feel like I connected with it, just because I've always thought about this concept of the commodification of time. And that's something I've been trying to
Yeah.
figure out how to write about or make a podcast about. But that song really made me think about. I remember, I think most people can identify a time that hopefully, I mean, not most people, but most people in the US and a certain economic middle class or something could identify a time where they felt free and like they could explore a little bit, maybe even if they were just kids, But then I remember in 2008, the quote unquote financial crisis, which you can watch movies about that if you want to know what that was about. I remember time feeling like it sped up, right? Like it was like money and things. It just took like it was like I had to make more money. I had to hustle. I had to, and
Yeah.
I think with the phones, blessing and curse, like we have access to all this information, but every single thing is screaming for your attention. And I feel like if you don't break away from that and take time away, which takes sometimes days, to really take a break from work and messages and things, that your time is being taken. And I felt like that in the song. It was almost like, I want to just go back to like walking around the city for no reason and having coffee with a friend and talking to a stranger, but I've got all these obligations and I've got to make money and I've got to stay safe and I've got to, the climate problems and like all. I felt like that's the zeitgeist we're in. I think one of the biggest, this is my own theory, but I think one of the biggest unknown crises, because it's not very obvious, is that people don't have the time to decompress and therefore they're more stressed. And that leads to a host of problems, social problems, economic problems, physical, mental health. And I thought that song didn't even say any of those facts, but it just made me think of that. And I felt it was very poignant.
It's kind of the title and the idea that you would set this kind of message to what is quite obviously a very easy listening sounding groove, right? A very breezy, easy listening kind of gentle samba-esque feel, and kind of feel good music. And to set that to set these lyrics against that is kind of hopefully the interesting idea, that we're longing for a bit of space to breathe, and longing for some to get back to a time when you can take it easy, and yet we're not there. And it has something to do with the messages that are being sent to that media and society are sending out to all of the people who are plugged in all the time.
Yes.
There's a lot of people that are constantly plugged in who are just devouring all this content, constantly interacting with it, just constantly. And maybe quite a lot of times they just want to put something on that gives them that feeling of that everything's going to be okay. There's that reassuring kind of gentle groove, So there's kind of a little bit of it, like, okay, so here's your mellow soundtrack to just chill out to, right? No stress. But in reality, if you get at all into what I'm saying, it is a bit about a critique of our of the stresses of modern life. So I like to play with those kinds of tension. And I mean, this stuff isn't crazy at all. I mean, I don't make difficult music. It's not avant-garde, but it is. I like to have those kinds of that little bit of tension there. Set the story to a sound that makes the story a little bit cheeky, right? There should be a little bit of a nod and a wink.
Yeah, it's true. It's quite a juxtaposition with the lyrics versus the music sounding like Antonio Jobim's cousin, who's a singer-songwriter in LA. A little bit of that.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, I love that, and I think a lot of the songs take on a story. And I think the cool part about when you're really, what I hear from you is your process, and you sort of said this to me on the phone one day, was about how you were trying to let the song speak through you, and whatever you're trying to figure out what the song has to say. It's kind of like your process, and to do that, you have to unplug. You have to set space and time away from maybe everybody, but maybe your bandmate who might be in the same room with you or something, playing another instrument, or maybe just by yourself, to reflect and let the energy come through. And I think that takes discipline nowadays. I think that perhaps humans used to do that more naturally when we were more of an agrarian society. And maybe they didn't mean to, but they when they weren't hauling in crops and the sun was setting, they had time to sit by the fire or whatever it was, right? I mean, I know that humans were also constantly busy in different ways, but now in the modern life, especially living in an urban city, it's just a lot of pressure, to be constantly plugged in, like you said. And so I'm glad that there's songwriters like you that do take the time to I think, at least pull away from the demands of whatever you're doing during the day to write these songs.
Though they never saw me, I could see plainly who they were. Billionaires sailing away with their shares, to sleep without dreams, without cares. Billionaires. I was out walking alone downtown somewhere. I saw them on the street, desperate souls with no trust in their name, with no ties or relations to billionaires, sailing away with their shares, to sleep without dreams, without cares. Billionaires. I saw Bezos and Gates, I saw Zuckerberg. They were boarding a spaceship, escaping the earth, closing the hatch with no signs of regret at all. Billionaires, 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 billionaires.
It's just funny because I'm at one point marveling at this futuristic world we're in, where someone can stream my song anywhere on earth, or practically anywhere, virtually anywhere. But at the same time, I am definitely lamenting another time in which we could slow down and take it easy a bit more. So yeah, it's a funny thing to be looking at I don't know. I don't know if there's hypocrisy in that or not, but
I would say nuance.
yeah.
I would say,
yeah.
I mean, as a person in psychology, one of the biggest things that I've noticed over the years, and it took me a long time to get into this concept, and, you know, barring like murder and barbarous acts, most things in the world that aren't abuse and neglect and exploitation seem to have a pro and a con, but like almost in a pole, you know, like a black and a white, but between the black and the white, there's this whole rainbow of spectrums, because that's where we come into play, right? How are we indulging in this? Because it's so cool that everybody all over the world can listen to your song, but there's so many things we could say about that. Like, why are the guys on Spotify on yachts and you aren't getting as much money off those plays? But maybe on the positive side, maybe somebody in South America who's depressed heard Bart Davenport's catalog and they are now feeling good again. And then they saved up some money and bought one of your LPs and shipped it to Brazil. I don't know. I mean, we have the right to interact. And I do think in modern world today, one of the things I have to work on, one of the most difficult things, and I didn't used to have to work on this back in when I was younger. Part of it's because I'm older and I have more responsibilities, but part of it is just the technology aspect and demands, is that it is a discipline and a practice to unplug versus
Right.
a discipline to be productive. Everything's egging us on, or to be intentional with your time. Because if you wanted to, you could just sit on YouTube for the next 500 years and watch whatever people have put up there. So I think, you know, to create a craft, whether it be a song or a wood carving or a cool drawing or to do something, takes intention and takes space. And I think music, in a way, is how we color time. You know, I may not be able to be a painter or a sculptor because I haven't put time into it and practiced it, but I can color the time of my day with some of your albums or somebody else's songs, and it makes my day better, right? And so there's that, but then there's so many other elements. We could keep going forever about all the different juxtapositions and seemingly hypocritical or cross, you know, purposes, you know. And it's so interesting in today's world that if you've lived long enough and you've been exposed to enough, there's a lot of gray or rainbow in the world. There's not one thing to say about your song or the streaming services or records, right?
Yeah. You know, and there's live music has a lot of different qualities, from recorded music and performing live versus recording, performing your own music versus doing cover songs. There's no right or wrong way to do any of it, and all of it comes with its own details. So it's it can get a little overwhelming when you realize that anything might be cool. Hey, yeah, what do you want to do? What, yeah. With recording, with live music, I like I like improvisation. I like I like dancing. I like all these things that have to do with it. That really are part of the live experience. With recorded music and with composition and writing and lyric writing and these kinds of things, I like trying to create little worlds for people to go into.
I like that juxtaposition between the world to go into, which is the world of the recording, versus the live experience is much more interactive. And
We're there. Well, let's do this. Let's do this together.
That brings me to a question. I was going to ask you to maybe talk about a couple of your favorite live experiences playing music live, and what you liked about it and why.
I've been at it for so long.
Yeah, right. Well, how long have you been playing live? I mean, ever since maybe you were in high school, or
well,
with an audience. Yeah,
I was in a choir in my grade school.
Wow.
That did performances in front of usually the parents.
Mm-hmm.
But our choir instructor was a jazz musician, a jazz pianist named Dick Whittington. And he had us kids, 10-year-old kids, singing jazz.
Wow.
So we were doing Ellington, Basie. We were doing the Jon Hendricks vocalese, lyrical versions of songs. Like, I remember we did Song for My Father by Horace Silver, which is a very sophisticated, very adult kind of song.
Mm-hmm.
Just amazing stuff. At the time, I didn't understand how sophisticated we were and how unusual it was to have a choir instructor having these 10-year-old kids sing jazz. And I didn't understand that. I just thought, oh, he's a grown-up. He wants us to sing this kind of music. It's pretty cool, I guess. I mean, I liked the Beatles, and I liked Michael Jackson, and I liked all these things that a 10-year-old. I liked Devo. I liked things that a 10-year-old would like, and it was almost like Ellington and Basie was probably too sophisticated for my taste at 10 years old, but I certainly enjoyed doing it because it was singing, and looking back on it, it was such a great learning experience. It's just such a great way to get going as a singer, to start with pretty challenging stuff. And we got to open for Bobby McFerrin.
Really?
And yeah. And then he let us come on stage and back him up on a song. And that was at the Berkeley Community Theater when we were in the small stage, I think, too. I don't know if now I don't remember what it was. It might have been a fundraising event or something that we were part of, but it probably was that he would do that, like do a gig with the kids. But yeah, it was Berkeley at that time in the early 80s. It was great. There was the school is called Malcolm X, and obviously it was that era in which a lot of the teachers had come out of the civil rights era, and of course a lot of the kids, there's a lot of black kids in the choir, and you can make the assumption that quite a few had some background with the church.
Mm.
So there was so many good singers. we might have just been a bunch of 10-year-old kids, but there was really good singing going on. And Dick Whittington had this vision to not just have the kids singing, I don't know, stuff from like Mary Poppins or whatever, which would have been cool. Just saying. That's good music too. But he had this vision to have us doing jazz. And I didn't, at the time, it didn't occur to me that this was special. I just thought, oh, this is choir and this is what you do. But now I look back on it as incredibly informative, and I love having that touch of jazz sensibility. I'm certainly not a jazz musician by any stretch, but it has definitely been an influence over the years, and I think starting at that young with a bit of that influence has gone a long way. I tend to use really rich chord voicings. Certainly not your basic majors and minors all the time.
I am an amateur musician, but I was noticing a lot of 9th and 7th and 11ths. Was I noticing that correctly?
Yeah. You got it.
Okay. Yeah. I do love those chord voicings because they have so much resonance to them. And I feel like you can almost go anywhere melodically with those when you have that big of a key. But there is that quote unquote jazz sound that comes out of those chords sometimes. Not very different than the punk rock power chord lineup, where there's just a very basic couple notes. Well, that is quite a story. I think it's interesting, and I mean, from a psychological standpoint, what this podcast has a lot of influence about is, I think it's the importance of getting kids involved in group activities and music. I think it expands your consciousness. I mean, I don't think I know this. There's brain research on it. Getting your kids involved in music helps with coordination and thoughts and thinking and really self-esteem, because you're up on a stage. They're
supposed to do better with math and science if they study music. I've been told that.
That's correct. Yeah.
Although I did not do well in those.
So that could have been from other factors, but yes. Yeah. There are outliers, yes, as we know. Yeah. I actually did a whole episode where I was reading a bunch of facts about music and the brain, and just playing music for fun or being part of a local choir or dabbling on your own or with a friend or singing as a kid or even as an adult actually helps your brain even as an adult. But as a kid, it obviously has a bigger impact because you're developing and it's easier for your brain to learn skill when you're younger. So actually, yeah, that's a wonderful story. I was curious about, I'm just going to throw it out here since I'm on the topic. Is there any performance that just sticks out in your mind as like Bart Davenport or one of your many bands you were in where you're just like, man, this was like, it was like one of those transcendent moments. I'm sure there's many. Just like one where sure the audience probably felt it, but where you were just like, wow, like this show needs to not end. Like, let's do 5 encores, like one of those.
I've been in town for a year or 5. Feels like I'm still waiting to arrive. I'm a screenwriter, a telemarketer. This modern love isn't modern art. One day it hit me like a shot to the heart. I need someone like you, someone to be sweet to, someone to be sweet to. I love the sight and sound of you. I love your ever-changing point of view.
On the spot, it's hard to think
That's
of
true.
just one, to be honest. But I feel like I could talk about that. I definitely live for those moments. I feel like there's just those moments when it all comes together on stage, where everything just seems to be coming together perfectly. It could have to do with a lot of really it could have to do with a lot of factors, like, oh, the monitor mix is really good, or I just changed the strings on this guitar or something. I mean, there can be a lot of mundane factors that add to that perfect moment. But it's also just if the band is really in sync with each other, or the audience is really responding, if you really feel like you're comfortable up there and getting a chance to just go for it and not be stuck in your head overanalyzing what you're doing or feeling self-conscious or any of that. You just let it go, get deep into the performance or something. I could tell you about dozens of times when I've had these moments that simply felt like what I imagine is like magic. I could try and recall that. There's so many of those that I could easily recall dozens of them off the top of my head. It's hard to choose one. But you live for those as a performer, and I will say that it's something that's been kind of easier to do as a solo performer with just the acoustic guitar and being alone, like a folk singer. Especially touring Europe, where you have audiences that will treat it like a recital and be and not talk over you, and be real quiet and attentive and really pay attention and really listen. So it becomes like something like giving a poetry reading, or maybe doing like a Baroque recital or something, where it's treated like an art performance. And when conditions are just perfect like that, you've got good sound on stage and you've got a great audience that's really there for you, you can then be free to try and really get into the songs and try and express something with them and tell a story with them. Try to feel something emotionally while you perform them, and not just be going through the motions of performing the task of it's this chord and this melody or whatever, but rather get into really the feeling. And I've found over the years, of course, just due to kind of pragmatics and economics, I've had to do about 80% of my touring alone anyway. So that might have something to do with it, but I felt like to have those really cathartic moments with a performance, it's actually been a bit easier to have them in the circumstance of just being the solo performer. Because once you introduce ensemble playing, which I also love to do, and I love playing with bands, it becomes this whole interaction between 4, maybe 5, 6 people. And then it can be harder to have that perfect moment when everyone's in sync with each other and we're all just like one brain or something. This shared thing where all our synapses are firing at the same time and it's like the same pattern or something, and perhaps when that happens, it's even more fulfilling or even feels like more magical than the solo performance, but it's harder to produce, and it's harder to reproduce over and over, because it's a more complex situation. You add the number of people on stage, and you add the kind of environments that bands play in. So I think some of my go-to moments when the magic happened, a lot of them, because I've done so much touring alone, are the solo performances. But that being said, yeah, I think there's a special, crazy magic that can go down when you've got the full band. So if that makes any sense. I mean, I could talk about the first time I ever played London, or the time the Loved Ones opened for John Lee Hooker or something. There's so many memorable concerts in a long career like I've had. But I do think that there's an interesting it's an interesting topic to look back at where and how and why those kind of cathartic moments can happen on stage, and the factors that lead to that, and the circumstances. I mean, I've learned to understand that it's kind of like surfing, right? Conditions have to be just right.
That's true. I like that. That's a very good metaphor. I've thought about that because I've been to, my God, I don't even know how many concerts. 1,000, maybe more.
Yeah, you've lost count.
I've lost count. Plus, I used to play in bands. I was in bands manically in bands from 2001 until 2008. And then I was in a solo kind of hobby, play gigs around town kind of guy for fun until probably 2016, 17. Now I just kind of record because I have too many responsibilities and I don't feel like practicing that much. But I think about your reflections on that. And I've seen some bands and some shows where I was just like, this is amazing. The crowd's into it. The band is at least sober enough to have those moments. Yeah. They're just there, and you can tell they
present.
Mean it. Present. They're present. Thank you.
Yeah.
And then I've been to shows where I've seen a band and I felt like they were just phoning it in, and it was a bigger venue. Maybe they've had some fame by now and they're just like phoning it in. And I was like, this is terrible. Why am I even here? And it's like commodified, or even going to a music festival, which I've only been to a few, like Lollapalooza 2005. And like some of the bands like really wanted it and they were hungry and just to play for that big of an audience and loved every moment, and they put their heart into it. And there was other bands that I felt like they were like entitled, like, I have to play Lollapalooza, what a drag, Yeah. And so
imagine.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, I feel like, but it's you never know, when you show up to a show. I do love the mid-size or smaller venues that I've seen bands in, the ones that hold, between 300 and 800 people. Like, I love those venues because I feel like you can really just feel the performance, where I don't, recommend this, but like, I have friends that have worked in the music industry. And so they used to get me tickets sometimes to like these big stadium shows, just what the hell. And they gave me some tickets to bands I won't name because I don't want to have hate emails coming in. And I was just like, this is what happens when a big corporation buys a small business. Like, this band, like, they've lost it, and we're just like sitting there. We might as well just be listening to the recording. you know, and it was so boring. And everyone was drinking like terrible beer and gross pretzels, and there was nothing. Where like when it's just a juxtaposition. I was there's a place called Crescent Ballroom in Phoenix, and the guy who started that, he's been a music fan for 30 years, and he made it all about the sound and the way you can see the show, and everybody in this venue can see the show, right? He's got these stairs in the back, and he's got the laid out just right so you can't be too far off stage, and the stage is kind of got a little bit of a rounding to it. And he's got the best food in town, this like Mexican menu, and he just puts his heart into it, right? And I saw a band there. I saw a punk band there on Monday called Cursive. And it was just like everyone was just like hugging each other, and it was just beautiful, right? And then I compare that, and I remember I saw you in LA. I brought some of my friends who hadn't ever seen your well, of course it was like you backing up people, but and that room was just full of these fans of you and Kelly and Robin Hitchcock, and it was just like a love fest. Like all the people around us were just like, "This is the best!" Like I don't even know who these people were. People were tapping me on the shoulder. I love this song. I'm like, who are you? You know. And then that venue called Zebulon, they had the phenomenal menu, and the people were just so nice that checked us in, and you know. And I think about, you know, I don't know, it's just the magic was there. And
yeah, the owners of Zebulon are in really deep music fans.
Yeah. You could tell because it was just everything was the volume was good. And then like, I don't know, you guys had all these other friends, like Jason Faulkner from Jellyfish jumped on stage at one point. Is that who that was? I think
yeah, Jason Faulkner. Yeah, he did jump on stage.
Yeah, and I was like, "What is this?" I guess I'm not used to I'm not used to being in LA and having like, you know, semi-celebrities jump on stage randomly when I'm at a show. You know, in Phoenix, it doesn't happen, right? It doesn't happen here. But you guys killed it, and it was just like the audience is like, you know, you could have kept playing for 2 more hours. You know, I don't think, you know, you might have been tired by that point, but I feel like that kind of venue just brings it in. And the people that came, they weren't there looking for some sort of, you know, popularity scene either. I mean, to be fair, I'm going to age myself. It was a little bit of an older crowd. And when the DJ came on later, all the young people came in at 10 or 45 or whatever it was. Anyway, but I think that right there, you know, there just can be magic. So I encourage listeners to go see live music, support your local artists, find out where the little artistic venues are that are some high school band. Go watch them. It's good for you. Anyway.
These kids today are a lot like me and you were. Seems like yesterday you were such a mystery.
The loved ones used to play Phoenix. We used to come out to Phoenix and play the Rhythm Room.
Yes, that's so funny. That's where I saw Sunny in the Sunsets for the first time, and I met Kelly there. And
oh wow, okay,
yeah, back 12 years ago. It was about 2011, I think. And the Rhythm Room was the biggest game in town. They have and they still do to this day, have rhythm and blues artists all the time.
We were playing there in the early 90s.
Oh, wow. Yeah. The Rhythm Room's got a history to it. And now there's probably, I don't know, 7 more venues now.
And that they used to book us out. They used to book us 2 nights in a row. We'd play a Friday and Saturday there.
Gosh.
And we would play 2-3 sets a night. They would have no other bands. We'd be the only band for the whole night, because the Loved Ones was more than anything else a blues band. So we were expected in those days, and I think it's probably still true in certain pockets of whatever there is of a blues scene nowadays, because I'm not really playing very many blues venues anymore.
Right.
But we were then. But we were back then for sure. And the whole thing was you'd be expected to come and be the only band for the whole night and just play a long time with breaks. But Phoenix was so great because that venue was perfect for us. And we were drawing this wonderfully eclectic crowd that would be, of course, blues fans, because it was the Rhythm Room, and at that time they were booking mostly blues music. I know they've expanded since then. And of course, the blues fans there, of course. And then we had all the different camps of the kind of retro crowds. So we had the rockabillys, we had the mods, we had the people that liked ska, we had some of the punk rockers. I remember Bam Bam from the skate rock band JFA would always come out and see us. And all of the different subculture weirdos would hang out together at our show. And that was really unique to Phoenix.
It's still like that, I have to tell you, at the smaller venues. That's so cool, because that's exactly the Central Phoenix scene. I've lived in Central Phoenix for a long time I've lived here full time and I live here part time, but it's always been that way since I moved. It's just like, there's not many of us, and we all wear different clothes. That's the funny part. So I went to the show on Monday, and I'm not even a huge punk rock fan, but I kind of wanted to see this band. And it was like, you had the punk rockers, you had the rockabilly people. Once again, you had like a bunch of nondescript, like working dudes and ladies. I love Phoenix for that, because people love music here. And that is, and it's now become a hotbed of touring. I think, I don't know what exactly conditions, but I know people used to skip Phoenix on the tours.
We never did.
Right.
We never did. We'd stay all weekend.
That's great. Yeah.
But I don't get to go there much anymore. In all honesty, I don't really tour in the United States very heavily anymore. But it's incredible how often Phoenix just kind of comes to mind for no real reason. And I go there so infrequently now that Phoenix has almost become an imaginary place where it's my imagined Phoenix, the Phoenix of the mind, is kind of this odd. It's this odd and kind of peaceful place that's not intense at all. It's probably, my imagined Phoenix is nothing like real Phoenix. It's just Phoenix, like the city of Atlantis is. Or you see what I'm getting at? You know?
Oh yes.
Like your imagined life on Mars or something. It's like, I just have this Phoenix now in my brain, and it's this place where everybody's happy.
Well, everyone's happy.
It's not intense at all.
Well, it's a lot of transplants, and so a lot of people are happy they're not shoveling snow in the Midwest. However, in the last 5 years, we've got a ton of California people that come here and complain about the weather. And I said, why did you leave?
Too hot.
Well, you got no taxes, but now it's too hot for you. I don't know what to tell you. We're not that far away from California, but
it's a dry heat.
Yeah, it's true. It's a dry heat. There's no moisture. So we're almost about to hit the lightning round.
It is the sunset of
ready for the lightning round?
Oh, God.
Okay.
Oh, God. No, in the words of Robin Hitchcock. Oh, God. Oh, God.
Oh, God. Robin.
Oh, God.
Okay, so the lightning round is something I do to torture people, and it only lasts about 10 minutes. But it's also for the deep cut listeners, because the deep cut listeners are the content hoovers. They need to suck up as much content as possible. And if you've listened to this point in the podcast, you are one of those content people that love the information. So what I'm going to do in this long form podcast is I'm going to name Bart Davenport albums. I might even say something about it. And then Bart only gets 30 to 40 seconds to say something about the album. Is that okay?
Yeah.
All right.
You're really challenging me because, as it has been proven, I am incredibly long-winded.
Same. I could talk to you probably for the next 5 hours if I didn't have to have responsibilities. So I'm going to actually set my timer to hold Bart accountable, but probably not myself because that's how I roll. So here we go. Bart's other project, you can check this out on streaming or buy the albums. Bart and the Bedazzled. Bart with the ampersand and the Bedazzled. The album Blue Motel 2018. Phenomenal album. Love it. I think it's a concept album. I don't know if it's a concept album. It's freaking amazing. Bart. This is me holding up the timer.
Blue Motel. Blue Motel was the result of working with Aaron M. Olson, who produced it. And he has an incredible band called LA Takedown. And that was a really special album production because it was sonically a huge collaboration with me and Aaron.
30 seconds. That was amazing. Listeners, check out Bart and the Bedazzled, Blue Motel. I showed to a few of my friends, and they were obsessed. Bart and the Bedazzled, the latest release, People, Person, and Cardboard Man singles. It seems like you might have hung out with the people from Earth Girl, Helen Brown. Is that the name of the group?
Right,
that I saw in LA a few years ago that I was amazed by. I saw them by accident. It was great. Love these singles. Super cool. Bart.
These are a couple of pretty cheeky songs, and they're a bit absurd. And one of them was so weird that I really didn't think I was the right lead singer for the song. So I got my great friend, Heidi Alexander, a.k.a. Earth Girl Helen Brown, to sing the lead vocal on it in my stead. And she did a fantastic job.
Love it. Love it. 30 seconds. Download those singles. They're on Bandcamp. Now back to Bart Davenport's catalog. We won't go all the way to the 90s. We're only going to go back to 2002. So let's go backwards. Physical World 2014. Love this album. I don't know why I love this album. I just do. And Dust in the Circuits, of course, is trending on Spotify as it's got 576,000 listens. Hopefully that's bought you a few coffees. Bart, take on Physical World.
You don't look too old. Wearing the changes well. Wearing the changes well. It's been forever.
Physical World was the result of me moving to LA and putting together a new group. So there was a lot of fresh perspective and fresh sounds, and also the songwriting took a real turn as I switched from being a NorCal to a SoCal resident.
Man, you're good at this. Sorry, that was 30 seconds. Keep going. We have one more comment. I'll let you do it.
It's Physical World is you wouldn't guess it, but I was pretty heartbroken.
Oh no. Okay.
So, Dust in the Circuits of Love.
I did notice that song sounded melancholy about.
And in a way that I was sort of heartbroken in that moment, in a way that I'm not on other albums.
Okay, yeah,
but I still try to have a sense of humor and make music that's pretty fun.
Good deal.
As I do.
Good deal. Love it. Searching for Bart Davenport 2011. This has been going viral in my friend circle because you cover, I believe it's all covers, really cool songs. Come On, Let's Go by Broadcast, Cayman Islands by Kings of Convenience, and a bunch of other ones. Are these all covers? I don't know. But it's a really cool album.
Ask me why a rambler ain't got no home, or ask me why I sit and cry alone.
So yeah, there's a long story that I don't have time to tell about how that album came into existence, but what I will say is it is an album of all covers, intentionally made to be a covers album, and it's also the only album of mine that's entirely solo acoustic. So it is, if you saw me perform on tour in Europe alone with a guitar, it would sound a lot like that album.
Beautiful. Definitely, listeners, get into this. Palaces 2008. I know that you told me that Kelly Stoltz helped with some of this album. I listened to this album, and actually, this sounded like a breakup album and very sad. And I was glad to listen to it, but I felt kind of like I was listening to a Nick Drake album a little bit, even though it doesn't sound like Nick Drake. Thoughts?
Young love, a careless love, another summer flame. Always I sing your praise, but I don't wanna play your game. I'm way past grown, got my number on your little phone. A young one like you cuts right through. A young one like you, so unlikely. A young one like you to do right by me. A young one.
Yeah, I guess there are some sad songs on that album, but I will tell you that I never heard it as a breakup album because I certainly wasn't going through a breakup when I wrote all those songs. There's maybe a couple that are. It's I had gone quite a while without making an album, so when I put that one together, I had a huge backlog of material to choose from, and Kelly Stoltz helped me choose those songs, and then he kind of co-produced the album and was there for the sessions for about half the songs.
Nice. Okay. Maroon Cocoon 2005.
Yeah.
My comments are there are some really fun songs on this album, really kind of funny and interesting. Also, maybe a prediction, because you were apparently in Oakland or San Francisco and you recorded this. There's a song about LA girls and Glendale, which I believe are both in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And Finishing School, of course, is like a very I don't know what I would call it, silly, fun, entertaining song. What are your thoughts on Maroon Cocoon? Sorry, I'm only giving you 30 seconds. Piece for the lightning round.
There's no part of me that she won't try. Hang me up and leave me out to dry. Looks like June, but she feels like July when we collide. Studying evil and finishing school. Who taught the girl how to be so cruel? Waiting and waiting for the ball to drop. Little bit weird like a dog on the roof. Think she may like me, but I have no proof. On the surface she is never aloof.
Maroon Cocoon. is one of my personal faves, and I think it kind of is a precursor to the latest one, Episodes. I think there are some similarities in the kinds of stories I'm telling and in a kind of the approach to, because both were home recorded. So the approach to getting those performances down, they were both done at home.
Well, now you've just blown my mind because I did not realize they were recorded at home. So that's phenomenal. Game Preserve. Now, I'll let you have a few comments on this one, but we did kind of go into it. But this one, to me, it sounds, like you said, like almost like a classic 70s, like well-produced album. It sounds like a time capsule, and I like it.
Game Preserve is the result of having a lot of time and budget to really make a proper studio album. And so there's, of course, no surprise, the end result is it's sonically of the highest quality. And it's being reissued right now, so obviously there's going to be some people checking it out for the first time, and I'm just quite proud of it.
Love it. Bart Davenport, 2002, self-titled. I feel like I don't want to comment on this because I want people to listen to it, but what are your thoughts? This is your first solo album.
Where is the silence synonymous with all the solitude that you embrace? Everything's loud with me, I've been in love with you all day. Now I've got to say I like you a lot.
Yeah, having just come out of being in bands for the previous decade, and for the first time getting out there as a singer-songwriter in that role, this was a collection of new songs and me attempting to become a singer-songwriter. And I think quite a few of those songs still really hold up. I still enjoy performing some of them, but it's definitely a first album. I think some really interesting things happened sonically there. There's a lot more experimentation on that record than some of the ones that followed. So you get to hear a bit more kind of weird little synth overdubs, and I was collaborating with a really eclectic mix of other musicians on that record. So it's kind of a wild ride in a way, but it's also very obviously a first album.
Nice. Good analysis. I'm almost done with the lightning round. Before I give you closing comments, I did have to say that I wanted to point out the single from 2012, Someone to Dance and Cheap Words. I found extremely catchy. Thoughts?
You're too scared to breathe. You slipped out my door to the cold and your little cold. I meant to tell you, she feels that ain't cheap enough. I'm giving up on this crazy life, this wasted love. Wreck the car you drive and run and buy another one.
My dear friend, Mr. Sam Flax, produced those songs, and he played all the instruments on them, and all I did was sing and write the songs. So that is a real heavy duty collaboration where we're getting the Sam Flax sound and Bart Davenport songs. And the big surprise on that was we made a video for Cheap Words, which is supposed to be a B-side, but it kind of became the A-side because the video drew a lot of attention to that song rather than the sort of rocker on the A-side. And over the years, I definitely started to see that Cheap Words was kind of a deep song, and the video really drove it home. I mean, it's definitely my best video in the sense of the story in the song being told as a video. It's just mission accomplished on that, and yeah, it's a unique song too. It's got a vibe that I don't have on a lot of my other songs. There's something kind of it's something to do with kind of like I was inspired by Johnny Thunder's "You Can't Put Your Arms Around a Memory."
Nice.
Yeah. It's sad, but it's a bit kind of cynical and rock and roll-y or something.
Yes, I think it definitely people got to listen to it. So I did that at the end. I sometimes do this with people who have a lot of information in their minds that I need to get out, is that I want people to see the depth of the artistry, and the stories that you told and the comments were phenomenal today. So this is what I call my closing words. I mean, my closing words are obviously, put Bart Davenport in your record collection. That's my comment to my listeners, which there's lots of them out there, hopefully. Depends on the episode and where they live. But I think definitely worth checking out. And I think one of those artists that, I think if you listen to popular music, you need to listen to Bart's songs twice, because there's so much depth to it. It's not like a Call Me Maybe or whatever on the radio. It's a deeper listen. So that's what I'll say as my closing comments. And Bart, I often invite people to talk to the podcast audience. We do get kids listening to this show. I know that seems a little crazy, but some teenagers do listen to this show, and other people that want to play music. So since you're an expert in music, that's what you do a lot of. I'm curious if you could give life advice or music advice, or any advice for people out there who are wanting to play music and get into that, or maybe just, wanting to be an artistic lifestyle.
Well, I'd say don't make it your career, because the vast majority of us cannot earn a living. But just get that out of the way. So just never have money be part of the equation. Think about all the other reasons you'd want to do it. And yeah, and is it really for you? Because anyone should be able to play music. There's a long tradition in all cultures all over the world of folk music and storytelling and sharing and all those things. And going back thousands upon thousands of years to, I'm sure, prehistoric humans were telling each other stories and singing each other songs. And that is something you don't have to have a career in music to participate in. And find the place where you feel inspired to put some work into it, and follow that. And do that on whatever level feels right for you, that you can actually accomplish. So there's people interacting with music in all these different ways, right? Not everyone who performs music should write music. Not everyone is a natural born composer. Not everyone is a lyricist. Elton John figured it out that he was a great composer, but he needed a lyricist. So he found a perfect partner in crime to write those songs. In Bernie Taupin. Burt Bacharach had Hal David writing his lyrics. And some of my favorite singers and performers are not songwriters, right? I'm very into Dionne Warwick and Dusty Springfield. And Dionne and Dusty, it's just, I just hold them in at the highest, and neither of them were writers. And as much as I love Leonard Cohen, he certainly doesn't move me like Dusty with the vocal performance. So you get in where you try to really find what the right place is for yourself, because everything has a value. Like, there's nothing wrong with playing cover songs at weddings. There's nothing wrong, with there's and like I said, anything can be cool if it's authentic and it has heart. So not everyone is a singer-songwriter. Honestly, sometimes I think I was not born to be one. I was more just kind of a singer and performer, musician. But I came up in an era when there seemed to be all this pressure to write what you perform. And so I forced myself to do it and tried over and over and over and failed. And eventually I got pretty good at it because I just didn't give up. But sometimes I wonder, did I have to do that? Like, did I have to go down that road? Because I think there's so many good songs in the world, and there's so many bad songs in the world written by people who maybe just shouldn't be wasting their time when they could be covering all these amazing songs by other people. So you see what I mean? It's like, just figure out where you want to be and just try to get in and do that. I just don't think there's any right or wrong way to do it, but you need to be authentic and have heart, and don't be a phony. Don't be a phony. Like, if I sing with a British accent sometimes, it's because I grew up with the Beatles, and that is the accent that you sing in. Because to me, that's singing. If I, I'm not, it's not that I'm being phony. It's that song sounds best sung in that accent. But I'm not pretending to be British, So there's a lot of things like that. Like, authenticity, I know, can be a kind of a subjective thing. But I really do feel that strive to be authentic in whatever way you imagine it is. And don't, you could be, everyone has the right to make music. And we certainly don't have to be professionals to do that. And there are great traditions of independent music in that sense. Folk music, blues music, punk rock music, all these things that I don't know. Yeah. I don't really, I don't want to disparage people that do it as a hobby, because here I am trying to be a professional all my life, and it's still also kind of a hobby, So just, it's yours. It's yours to do what you want with it. It belongs to everyone.
When Alice arrives on a beam of velvet light.
And there you have it. This has been another episode of the Intentional Clinician podcast. If you're enjoying this show, please share it with people you know. I would surely appreciate it. Or take just a minute to give us a rating on iTunes. As most of you know, I am passionate about preventing future violence in the United States. My colleagues and I have started a nonprofit called the National Violence Prevention Hotline, a 501c3 organization. We are endeavoring to gain funding and collaborators so that we can start a 24/7 hotline and chat line to reach potential perpetrators before they act violently. It is a bold effort to save lives and curb violence by working to connect with potential offenders while they are in the planning stages of violence, help to de-escalate them, and provide resources so that they can get appropriate professional help. The National Violence Prevention Hotline is looking to open up a conversation about violence in society, the causes, and the solutions. You can learn more by visiting our website, www.violencepreventionhotline.org. Join us online by signing our petition on the website, sharing the website with your network of people, donating to the cause if you like, and you can now even write your congressperson from our website with a simple form. I've said it before and I'll say it again. If you are a therapist looking for ethical and excellent medical billing services, check out therapistbillingservicesllc.com. That's www.therapistbillingservicesllc.com. Billing services created by therapists for therapists. If you're looking for an EMDR International Association consultant, I am a consultant and I can provide you the 20 hours you need to become EMDRIA certified. I have groups online and in person, and I do individual consultation. Just send me a message at the website and I'll get back to you. If you want to get trained in EMDR therapy, check out the great training opportunities with EMDR Training Solutions. I've worked with them before and they are phenomenal, so register today. If you are in need of counseling, do not hesitate to make an appointment at a local counseling center in your area. You can also make an appointment with the excellent clinicians in the Grand Rapids, Michigan area at Health for Life Counseling and the Trauma Informed Counseling Center of Grand Rapids by visiting www.healthforlifegr.com. The recording you just listened to consists of the personal opinions of Paul Krauss and his guest, and while these are based on the literature they have read and the experience in their fields, this should not be viewed as a definitive opinion on any subject. Listening to this podcast is not a substitute for treatment. If you're in a crisis, please dial 911 or the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 988. You can also text 741-741 and a live trained crisis counselor will respond. Did you know you could support your local bookstore by shopping at www.bookshop.org? You can order from the comfort of your own home online while supporting local brick and mortar businesses near you. If you are a therapist and you are not a member of your national or local therapy organizations such as the American Counseling Association or the American Mental Health Counselors Association, please get involved. At least pay the dues. It will help the lobbyists in our field keep us from becoming gig workers. And of course, there's the bonus of increasing mental health education around the United States and helping people understand what counseling is and promoting best practices within our profession. Until next time, I wish you all a safe and peaceful week.
There's a bearded man paddling in his canoe. Looks as if he has come all the way from the Cayman Islands. These canals, it seems, they all go in circles. Places look the same, and we're the only difference. The wind is in your hair, it's covering my view. I'm holding on to you on a bike we've hired until tomorrow. If only they could see, if only they had been here, they would understand how someone could have chosen to go the length I've gone, to spend just one day riding, holding on to you. I never thought it would be this clear.